Hello, my name is Clara Maveglia and I founded a Cultural Entrepreneurship Institute in Berlin. Today we are in Venice, in Italy, and my guest is Professor Giupponi, the Dean of the Venice International University. Welcome, Mr. Giupponi.
Buongiorno, Professor Giupponi.
Good morning, Professor Giupponi. How beautiful it is to be here in Venice, to be here with you at the Venice International University. You are the Dean of Venice International University, located on the San Servolo island. And you're also a well-known researcher in the field of the integration of different interdisciplinary systems. The economic, the environmental and the social one. Would you like to talk about this? Well, it is difficult to start with this question, but I shall try nevertheless to explain to you how we try to develop the concept of integration of different disciplines. And this will help me also introduce VIU, Venice International University, to tell you what is so special about it. The idea of integrating different disciplines is not a new one. We have always tried to develop a dialogue between specialists of different disciplines. However, this dialogue has always been pretty difficult due to several reasons. First of all, because of the different languages. Every field has its own jargon, its own specialistic words that not everybody understands. Or maybe the very same words are used with a different meaning. So these are the daily problems we encounter when multidisciplinary research groups are developed. There is always a very difficult starting phase, which is a challenge to understand when we start to understand each other. So as far as the integration between social, economic and environmental fields is concerned, there are of course many international researchers, and we try to conjugate this general ambition towards integration in relation to the problems which are closest to us. And this brings me back to the Venetian issues and the VIU issues. To give you an example, it is impossible to understand the environment of the lagoon of Venice without integrating ecological, hydraulic, historical, economic knowledge. There is a lot of talk about the Anthropocene age to indicate the geological age we live in. Human beings are so pervasive in their actions that they actually govern the planet. And Venice is most likely one of the most evident examples of the way how human beings have governed part of this planet in the past. VIU, and it is difficult to explain in a couple of words what it is. VIU does not have the disciplinary constraints that are typical of research centers and universities. At VIU, we're totally free and open to the cross-contamination from different fields. I've taken office little more than 1 year ago, and this has been for me a wonderful opportunity. For sure, it is a challenge, but it is also a wonderful opportunity. Integrating different disciplines, going beyond our borders, is something that here has its own space, a space which cannot be found anywhere else. These ideas apply to all our courses. We hold courses for university students, master courses, PhD courses, continuous education courses. While talking about research, I have read that you have developed a software that supports the decision-making process in the field of the environment, considering the impact of the different possible strategies that can be implemented. Can you talk about that? Well, how did it all start? Actually, I love research when it produces something tangible, something that you can see and something that you can use. I'm talking, of course, of applied research. And you have mentioned the field of decision-making support. It is a very stimulating field. The researcher aims at transferring knowledge to others, allowing other people to use data and information to make decisions that are beyond the scope of researchers. In other words, it's a transfer of knowledge. These software tools, the so-called decision support systems, are IT tools transferring knowledge. Our research group has participated in different national and European projects, and I can proudly say that there are not many examples of products of research surviving after the end of the project. We tend to work on 3-year and 4-year or 5-year projects. And unfortunately, most frequently when the project is finalized, the result, the product, may be published in scientific magazines, but nobody actually maintains and makes the product perennial. We have invested a lot in this in the last few years, and today we have products that are free for use, everybody can download them free of cost, and they represent the evolution of the different tools as well as the evolution of our approach to the problem of supporting decision-making processes. It is a very stimulating field. The tool is for sure something interesting because you see it, you can view it on your computer, you can play around with it. For several reasons, however, we like to emphasize the fact that the tool is a tool. A tool can be useful, but it can also be used in the wrong way or in a stupid way, since it is free to download to everybody. So we always emphasize the role of the tool as one component of a whole process. In other words, we have produced a support to the enactment of processes which are necessarily inclusive processes based on participation, in which the researcher and the decision maker share knowledge to make decisions that must be shared as much as possible. We do not pretend to say that thanks to our tools and thanks to our methods, this is always possible. Of course, there are conflicts in whichever decision pertaining to the economic and the environmental field. This is just our contribution to facilitate the solution of these conflicts, to facilitate the process leading to a final decision which will be the result of a compromise, but which will be an acceptable solution. In other words, a preferable solution, not necessarily the best solution, also because the concept of best is a subjective concept. We refrain from using the term optimum. It is hard to say that one thing is the optimum for the solution of a problem, but it is the preferable one in that given context by the people who've worked on that, given that cultural and scientific situation. Sure, so you take into due consideration all the different factors. I've heard that the software provides you with the possibility of simulating, so based on this data bank, you can understand what happens if you make a certain decision going in a given direction, and what happens if you go in the opposite direction. Of course, before making a decision, and I'm telling you this as a philosopher, it is always better to take all the possible future evolutions into account. And then, of course, the decision is made in a given moment and in a given context, and it should be the most preferable one. Yes, there is a clear-cut distinction between two fundamental elements, which should never be confounded. There is a phase during which you can scientifically and objectively analyze a problem. In this case, efforts are made to use knowledge, all kind of knowledge, in the most rational way. But of course, you always have to interface this with the evaluation component. Evaluation, as the word says, implies a comparison between what we have and our scale of values. And the scale of values is subjective. It is linked to a certain cultural context. So we just try to facilitate this passage. Data banks, maps, satellite pictures, all what we use, the results of environmental monitoring and interviews. Well, these are all our objective data, which are processed so that they can be integrated one with the other, because that is the essence of the environmental and economic issue. And then we try to move towards the evaluation phase in the most transparent way possible. This process, once it is enacted and repeated within the framework of the existing rules and laws, well, this actually produces knowledge, it produces culture. The second time you repeat a process in a given context based on accumulating data, you take advantage of your previous experience. So this is our small contribution. This is an extraordinary example of the way how technology can truly help us. So we should not be afraid of these new tools, so much so that, talking about ethics, moral, engineering, think about the trolley issue. I mean, if we talk about these fields, you can't think it is better to kill one instead of 5, but if you ask this question to the person, what about if the person killed is your mother? Well, these are things that make us think. In other words, a human factor is paramount when decisions are made. Maybe that is the best decision for the environment or for the economy. But if it actually destroys a social context, then you cannot do it. And this is what I really like in your approach, which I believe can also be applied to many different fields. Yes, you actually mentioned 2 very important points. Whatever decision, from the most trivial one to the most strategic one for mankind, is based on another fundamental element, which is foreseeing the result of what I am deciding to do. This is a fundamental element, because either you proceed with a trial and error approach, and one learns through this, causing, however, also extremely unpleasant consequences, possibly, or I can make better decisions if I'm good at foreseeing the result of my decisions and foreseeing the interaction between my decisions and what is out of control. This is a fundamental element when we talk about sustainability, which is a topic that is very dear to us. The concept of sustainability means giving the right weight to all what you have mentioned before. There are 3 main pillars: society, economy, environment. So it is necessary to give them the right weight when contrast is unavoidable. And then you should project this in time, because a sustainable development provides a future generation with the same opportunities we have today. So combining these two elements together, the capability of foreseeing, of predicting, and understanding the interaction with what is out of my control, I can choose the most preferable choice today. This is scenario analysis, which means understanding, and I apologize if I'm using some technical words. Statistics provides us with the possibility of understanding the probability that a certain event may take place. Unfortunately, the complexity of social ecosystem is such that we rarely do have the possibility of understanding what can happen in probabilistic terms. But we can reasonably hypothesize that A, B, or C happens, or many other things. So this is the scenario approach. So we're not saying most likely things will go that way, so this is the best decision. But rather, since things could take A direction, B direction, C direction, my decision made today must function properly, independent of whether we move in the C direction, the B direction, the C direction, since I cannot control the macro dynamics within which the decision is made and enacted. You've grown up in Venice. Is this important for you? I mean, you're back to Venice now. Venice is culture, beauty. How much did all this contribute to your development? Well, I can tell you that I have spent part of my life here, but I've also lived on the mainland. And having seen both Venice, having lived in Venice and having lived on the mainland has been a great opportunity for me. I have worked most of the time outside of Venice. I've lived in Mestre and Padua. And the Venetian nature can be interpreted in many different ways. It is for sure a life opportunity. Because the quality of life we have here in Venice is something that cannot be easily found elsewhere. So many things are available to us in an immediate way. What I mean to say is I can decide to practice sport. I can ride my canoe, or I can take the ferry and go to the beach. And I can do this in my free time when I'm not working. I mean, this is an opportunity that enriches your life. And we're all very lucky to have this opportunity. That is also a significant stimulus. Having spent many years in Venice is also something that makes me aware of a certain pressure. We are exposed to huge problems here in Venice. The problems that pervade this place that we all love. I'm talking about managing tourism, managing the environment, managing pollution. So I believe we're privileged. We're exposed to many stimuli. And we are surrounded by history, but we can see very clearly the dynamics of globalization, as well as social economic dynamics that develop with an amazing speed, and you can perceive this here. So here we can understand the intertwining of these different dimensions. It is clear, if you live here, that a solution can be found only if you consider the complexity of the whole system. So having lived here for many years is something that has really influenced me. But unfortunately, the number of inhabitants is dwindling. The interdependence, which is necessary for the survival of an ecosystem like Venice, Well, this interdependence is something that has been recognized already many years ago. I'm actually reading a book right now on the rise and fall of classical Greece. In the period of classic Greece, there was a lot of wealth, a lot of economic wealth. And that's why there was such a fabulous cultural blooming. I mean, this happened in Venice as well, in the 17th and 18th century. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And Venice still lives because of that. I mean, the tourists come here for the beauty of Venice, for the architecture, for the cuisine, for the very special geographical place, and for the fact that you do not use your cars. So you talk to the people, you walk on bridges, there is a lot of water. These are all features that bring human beings back to a human context, back to a human level. In the United States, for instance, everybody just drives cars. There is no contact between the people. This is why I believe that Venice truly has an exceptional ecosystem. And to preserve this cultural and economic heritage and the history of mankind, we should all try to do something. But before moving to the different components and the different cooperations of VIU, I would like to talk about another division of yours that is also being very successful. It is the one focusing on start-ups, viewing the Italian craftsmanship as a significant part of the Italian heritage. In Venice, there is no serial industrial production of shoes and bags. Whatever it produces is peculiar, unique, bespoken, from door fittings to historical products. Can you please explain me how this has evolved? Because I believe you see craftsmanship as the future. Well, for sure, I'm not the best person to talk about this. At VIU, what we do actually also depends on the people who are here. People with different roles, coming and going. So I believe that my colleague, Mr. Micheli, who's been the Dean here for several years, well, he would be the best person to explain this. I can only tell you that I'm trying to cultivate this heritage, trying to find opportunities and stimuli to further develop this. VIU has a consolidated tradition. VIU plays a role in training and educating, but it is also a catalyzer of research, and craftsmanship is one of the most glamorous examples, thanks to the convergence of the competencies deriving from the different universities that are members of VIU. In the last few years, many innovative steps have been undertaken, and we are still moving forward. So the idea of viewing craftsmanship and artisanal activities as a place for innovation, as a place where tradition is reinterpreted and revamped on a daily basis, is for sure a very interesting way to view VIU, which here in Venice is actually doing something which is natural here. Would you like to talk about tourism? Tourism as an opportunity for Venice, but as a risk as well. Well, I can start by saying that the problem of tourism in Venice has reached such a level that it requires to be tackled, managed and resolved within an international context. This actually applies to all the problems of the city and of the lagoon ecosystem. And whenever it has been possible, we have always tried to tackle problems in this way. Tourism has reached such a level that it requires an approach that must be based on the state of the art of the tools and knowledge we have at international level. Now, I do not want to enter the polemics that flare up on a daily basis regarding how things should be done. However, once again, we can see that tourism is evolving following dynamics which I wonder, and I'm not an expert in tourism, I wonder whether anybody can actually predict these dynamics. In the last few years, for instance, there has been an explosion in tourism in our city through bed and breakfast offers. And this is actually a new opportunity that can be interesting for families. But for the city, there is some extra pressure on the housing market, which is already extremely limited and characterized by astronomical prices. In other words, tourism, if I oversimplify, is something that can actually work and that makes many things work in Venice, because it is thanks to tourists that we have resources for an excellent public transport system, which is hard to find at such a good level in other Italian cities. So we need to balance and govern these dynamics. Historically, unfortunately, we do not have many examples of the way how our city has tried to predict future developments. However, these dynamics have found their own balance, their own equilibrium. And tourism today is fragmented into different components. We have day tourists, we have cultural tourists that are combined with each other and alternate throughout the year. Well, my impression as a citizen is that these dynamics are reaching such a level that urgent measures are required. I'm not talking about punishing measures, but we need to govern all this. We cannot relinquish the responsibility to govern all this. Several years ago, studies had estimated the capacity of the city of Venice in ecological terms. And the touristic value that had been estimated amount to approximately 50% what we have today. So whether these studies were correct or not, well, for sure these studies had been carried out with care, but maybe today we could do better studies. Anyhow, the level of touristic pressure is extremely high, and it requires solutions. Could you please give us some practical examples? What does a tourist do here? Which is a kind of impact of a tourist on the city? Well, I believe it is useful to define categories of tourists. I mean, there are tourists nobody wants that have a negative impact. There are those tourists nobody like because they only have an impact without leaving anything positive. These are day tourists. Those tourists that make it difficult these days to walk on Rialto Bridge. Beach tourists coming to Venice because it is cloudy. Well, of course, any person coming to the Venice area won't miss the opportunity to come and visit our city. We'll live here. We'll love culture. And how can a person think of having visited Venice after spending only 3 hours here? This is horrible. And this compression leads also to a concentration in some specific places, like St. Mark's Square, for instance. This is another very negative impact, and it is becoming a real problem. There is a growing number of individuals concentrating in some specific places. Attempts have been made to diversify access, to distribute people better. But how can you think that a person visiting Venice does not go to St. Mark's Square? Everybody will try to get there. We're talking about controlling access. Coming from the Department of Economics, I'm tempted to say that it is impossible not to find incentivizing and disincentivizing mechanisms. I mean, certain people coming in a certain way should have an easy life, and those who come in a way that is not sustainable for Venice should find so many barriers that they should think again. I'm talking about price policies, cars. Many attempts have already been made in the past. Controlling access, I'm not an expert, but as a non-expert, is something that leaves me a little bit puzzled. I mean, thinking about turnstiles as a citizen, I think that if I have to go from Campo San Moisè to Campo della Guerra via St. Mark's Square, and I have to go through turnstiles with the queue of tourists having to show their badge, well, this is horrifying. It is very worrisome. We citizens view the square as something that belongs to us. These problems are not easy to solve, but we must necessarily find a solution for the very survival of our city. Well, let me add, for those who do not know that the problem of day tourists in St. Mark's Square is also linked to the fact of walking on the marble flooring that wears off. Then these people perhaps eat their sandwich, leave rubbish around, they need a toilet. Water is also a big issue here. Talking about sustainability and environment. For Venice, for this lagoon, this is closely connected with survival. On San Servolo Island, where the Venice International University is located, which environmental measures have been taken? Well, allow me a short digression. We're talking about VIU, but I know that it is very difficult to understand what it is and which are its main features. Sure, let's talk about the VIU first. VIU is an association of 17 international universities. San Servolo is the physical place where VIU is located, and it is a very attractive place for anybody. It is an important asset. People love to come to San Servolo Island. And that's why VIU is located here, on this beautiful island. These 17 member universities, together with many other agencies we work together, carry out activities on San Servolo Island. We organize courses of different academic levels. We carry out research activities, and VIU plays the role of catalyzer. We catalyze experiences. We have an excellent staff of people who have been working here for years, and they facilitate the work of researchers. I also work at Foscari University, and I can see that the integration between VIU and Foscari you can actually produce added value. If I've understood your question correctly, I would like to say also that VIU is not just an example of what can be done and how it can be done. VIU wants to be a demonstration as well, a demonstration of how you can do things. We have developed a very close cooperation with the company that on behalf of the Venice municipality manages and is actually the owner of the island. And I believe that in this field there are huge opportunities. We both share the goal that those who come here attending a course on sustainability can also live in a sustainable way. It is not easy because, as you all know very well, there's so many constraints in Venice, so it is difficult to do something extremely innovative, but we're trying to do that. In the last few months, we have worked so that the whole island is included in a cabling project with an access network which is directly connected with the network of the Italian universities. And this is just a small example of this wider project of San Servolo as a sustainable island. The municipality of Venice supports us, and we want this island to become an example of how things can be done. We shall try to do this in different ways, also trying to have access to international funds. And this is one of the most important elements of the San Servolo system. Let me add the following. I frequently come to Venice, and I am really fascinated by this island and by the interaction here at San Servolo between beauty and science. If you go to the bar, for instance, you can meet a professor coming from Beijing. Also, this kind of interaction in free time is really stimulating and profitable. And for the first time, I've seen that you use non-bleached toilet paper. We know that the bleaching process is carcinogenic. People are used to white toilet paper, and people go on selling it, but it is not good for your health. So I've seen that you have unbleached toilet paper. Well, this is just one of the many, many things that make up the whole system. The Academy and other agencies interact on the island, and I'm very glad of this spirit of cooperation, which is maybe something new here. The spirit of cooperation allows ambitions to grow, and we shall for sure go beyond unbleached toilet paper. You can be sure about that. Let me quickly read some of the keywords that appear when you click on your web page, on the web page of VIU, which is viu.it. Keywords are creativity, innovation, design, green and circular economy, sustainable logistics, environmental security, innovation in public administration, aging, cultural heritage, international, multidisciplinarity, intercultural. These are fabulous keywords. And I would like to stress, before you tell us more about cooperation and about the different nations cooperating in San Servolo, I would like to go back to Leonardo da Vinci. During the Renaissance, Leonardo had the following motto: art, science, enterprise. Well, I believe I can see it here at the VIU. Leonardo da Vinci plus the possibility of modern technology. Well, I'm very ambitious, but Leonardo da Vinci is really the highest goal. Thank you very much for this pointer, which is perfectly in line with the spirit of VIU. You have mentioned many of our initiatives. They alternate. The key words you've mentioned are titles of summer schools, of research programs. They all pertain to VIU in the sense that this is what we do here with the support of our partners. The United States, China, Switzerland, France, Germany, Italy, Israel, Japan. 17 universities scattered all over the world contribute to all this. And everyone coming here leaves something behind, awakens interest. And it is our goal to make sure that with our resources we can actually further develop these concepts. Circular economy, responsible capitalism, for instance. These are ideas that were brought here by colleagues, ideas that we have tried to further develop and to implement with an economic support, ideas that then become self-supporting. When they meet with interest, they can find the necessary resources to become perennial. I shall give you the example of a summer school. During the first years, we support summer schools with our internal funds. Of course, our students and our colleagues will attend the courses free of cost, but these courses might be of interest for other people who may contribute with a fee so that we can collect the necessary resources to go on offering education and to go on evolving our educational offer. My own personal goal, this is one of my innovations, is that of creating an umbrella. That is, there is a huge number of initiatives, a plethora of initiatives, which is something beautiful. However, in the next few years, it is my ambition to make VIU as a recognizable reference point for certain themes, for certain topics. I am developing the idea with the support of Foscari as well, of involving all my colleagues on the ground of global challenges. The colleagues of the Academic Board of VIU will provide a contribution to recognize those areas in which we have the critical mass, to identify themes that can become the core of VIU, so that VIU in the coming years will be recognized as the place where that kind of theme deserves and receives specific attention. All the key words you have mentioned pertain to our activities, but in the future we want to condensate, to crystallize this network of keywords around specific topics. So hopefully, when you come and see us next time, you will see these clusters of ideas that have aggregated into something that has the peculiar characteristics that are typical of this place, that is the interdisciplinary, intercultural and international approach. Thank you very much. One last question. With YouTube, you're now talking to a very wide audience, to an unknown audience. Which is your message to the network users, who may be tourists, scientists, students? What would you like to tell them? Well, I would like to tell them to spend 3 or 4 minutes on our website to understand what VIU is, in the hope that they can understand that we are a hub, we are a center where ideas can be developed with opportunities that cannot be easily found elsewhere. So go and see what we are doing, go and see what you can do with that, and please help us develop new ideas here at VIU, following the concept that when an idea is proposed to us, we share it with our 17 member universities, activating competencies and knowledge to do something useful. A very last question. You are a Venetian citizen, and I know that you want to preserve the beauty of this lagoon for the coming generations. Which is your message in this respect? Oh gosh, such a difficult question right at the end. Well, I believe that we should go back to what we have said before. That is, the last thing to do here is to proceed by trial and error. Possible consequences can be catastrophic, and they would not only have a local impact, they would impact the whole world. We must be humble enough to share our knowledge, and we must try to predict a Venice of the future, which won't be today's Venice, which won't be the Venice of the past. So we must go beyond the logics of conservation, and we must think of the development, of the evolution of Venice. So the system Venice must go on working so that future generation can enjoy it. But of course we need new modes, new ways that must result from the interaction of the different huge local values and all what we can find all over the world. Wonderful! Long live Venice, long live San Servolo. Thank you very much for all what you do. Thank you for coming to see me.